Hello everyone, and welcome to another Friday stream here at Strange Loop Games, where we continue looking at future stuff that is coming to Eco. And hope everyone has had a great week. It's been a bit chaotic for me. Things are happening, things are evolving quite quickly. Blacksmithing stuff is merged to the staging branch, so if you have access to that, you can hop in and take a look at it. There's still a little bit, yeah, the he's being a bit feisty, roaming around and rummaging around a bit in the background. Ignore the cat, or at least try to some extent. Sitting in the corner going wow. Right, so we've got 3 topics for tonight that we were gonna take a look at. One of them being, as the title is, never ignore the cat, it'll lead to the end of the world. So we got 3 topics. One of them being the leading topic in the title for the streams, and that is injunction. What the heck are they? What do you use them for? Why are they here? And it might lead to a little bit of a controversy because it does give you kind of superpowers, if you will, in terms of civic management of sub-settlements. And we'll go in a little bit on depth on kind of how enforceable they can be, and within the game civic architecture, everything's kind of dealt in absolutes. So going over a little bit on that aspect, and then we'll take a look at the where we're at with the blacksmithing stuff and all of that has been merged in. Like I said, there's still a few polished things that's coming. The power hammer is not entirely textured yet, so I only have a non-textured version of it as a screenshot at the moment from the art team, but that should be done fairly soon. And then we have a bunch of icons that needs to be sorted out, but it's making progress. And then we'll talk a little bit about water stuff, where we're at with water, and it's a heavy subject, on probably weighing on a lot of people's mind, especially if they have a mechanical power requirement and so on and so forth. Yeah, we've got a few improvements that is being worked on. There are a few that it's in review right now. It's not gonna, unilaterally we fixed water. That it's a constant improvement thing. But just going over some of the stuff that we have planned for, hopefully a hotfix within a not too far time span. As I know, a lot of people have had problems with the water kind of being a bit rowdy, I guess. The big cases tends to be when water is turning into encased water, which is our kind of back end systems surrounding optimization of water. So it's not calculating like all the blocks in the world that's water. There's a few kind of sneaky ways that performance issues handled. And that in return caused some issues when you have pipes dismantling and you're breaking pipes and water sources kind of being created all over the place, and you have your entire basement flooded and you can't get rid of it because XYZ. Anywho, we'll get to that. It's gonna be a fun thing. And we also got some follow-up issues where we're looking at how to further improve it after the current kind of things gets done. And a lot of the water stuff is being resolved by Gabriel, not me. I'm just sane voice in looking at what we need to do and what needs to work in the way that we're working. So yeah, I think we just cut right into my poor man's little setup. Hey Zubats, developing on the Unity code from open source project. You're talking about dev tier stuff and just like specifics in the Eco project. If you don't have permissions for the backers channel, make sure that you get those from Dennis, since that's kind of where you can dig into to the dev tier specifics without getting kind of overvoiced by all of the other topics that goes on in there. Yeah, I guess some people are coming over from just sitting in queue on White Tiger. No, so injunctions. What are they for? How do you use them, and why do we need them? Well, as with the settlements release, which we got stream Twitch drops on SLG streams. That's not a bad idea. Maybe we ought to do that at some point. But yeah, so injunctions are a way of, as someone was quoting, I guess, the wiki earlier here, it's basically a legal means to override someone else's legal means, essentially, at the base core principle of it. These can manifest in many different forms, shapes, and whatnot. And to kind of illustrate this, I've come up with an amazing, a truly wondrous law that outright prevents digging, spectacularly enough. So this law that is preventing digging is set inside the town that I have here. So if we go into world layers and we go settlements, so inside this area I've got this law that is active, and as you can see here, I've got this Prevent Digging Act. It is confined to Iceforge Square, which is the fantastically named town that auto-generates when you're using commands. And if I go outside of this, it's going to be fine. You know, can dig as normal. And stuff is happening, although the prediction system is a little bit laggy at the moment. But yeah, you get the picture. I can dig outside the town without problems. I can't dig inside the town because the town has said, bam, you're not allowed to dig in it for any number of reasons. This particular one, I just have it as, you just can't do it. And that is set onto here, where the jurisdiction is set for the town. Law is for preventing digging. Fairly straightforward. On dig or mine, prevent. Now, if this town now joins a country, and the country has a general policy of it wants to be able to allow anyone to do harvesting of materials, or it wants to do anyone is supposed to be able to terraform outside of someone's property, but this town here has a law that is outright preventing anyone that is not specifically a member of that town, then the top tier, like the above settlements, don't really have a way to deal with that. We do have a way to do the opposite, where if you have a law inside a country, it'll apply inside the town, but there's no way to take a law in a town and nullify it, basically. Like, you can't be a non-townee and go like, hey, nuke this law because XYZ. And that is where injunctions comes into play. So an injunction, we go into the large court here, where we still have, so we're making sure that this law, this court is not inside the town. Doesn't matter if it's federation or country, because at the stage here the town is a member of both. But if we do it from the country's perspective here, we can go into this new component, which is the injunctions component, and these are available inside the large courts only. We've talked about if we wanted to do like a completely separate object for it, but at the moment it's kind of hingent on the large court. And what we can do here is we can draft an injunction, and we can just making sure that it is behaving properly. Yeah. And we can do a so override digging prevention, just to have a text on it. And now in here you have a whole bunch of new options. One of them being you can outright select the triggers. So in here you can go in and select whichever trigger you want, and any law that is affecting or using this trigger is being abolished, basically, or blocked, in lack of a better term. And then you can go on, so you've got triggers to do, and you also have legal actions. You can do both, either by the actual trigger itself, or by the actual offending legal action. So for example, if you want to prevent people from, or prevent revoking of citizenships to be happening through laws, you can just do that, and you then get to select the affecting settlements. So in this case, we're in the country, so we only have one sub-settlement here. And if we do this, we can cancel those out because we don't need those now, because we do have one specific law that we want to target. And that is the fourth option here, which is you can select whichever specific law you want to inject sort of an override for it. So if we grab that Prevent Digging Act and we set that new election and we push it to election, and then we just cheese our way through it with a quick command, you now get a notification for the injunction is now blocking this specific law, which means if things are working as they should be, might take a while for it to actually update. And I'm also having was doing some code stuff to make sure that it wasn't outright crashing the client here earlier. We have a few polish tasks for the injunction to actually happen and take place. Let's see if it actually, let's do slash civics tick now. Let's see if this actually wants to update properly. Doesn't want to let me do it. Well, you know what I say. Very sad, but it's I'm also kind of ignoring a few things in code that are being a few things. There you go. I'm gonna see if it actually lets me do it on a client restart just quickly. But yeah, so the general intention is just making sure that top tier settlements has a way to override lower tier settlements when they're doing things that the general consensus of the entire country is basically no specific town is supposed to be preventing collecting of grass, or because you can do things like anyone is allowed to cut stumps, and then a specific town has, see if it actually, oh, it's still not allowing me to do it. I swear it was working. But it's basically doing that and making sure that if a town has a bad law, or taxing 400 million of XYZ currency, you can just push that in there. You can push it out of the way, and making sure that that law is no longer having actual effect. And you can also see it pops out references inside the law that it is being prevented, and it's actually blocking out as well. So with this, I also talked to John a little bit about if we wanted injunctions for injunctions, so that's something that might happen as well. We'll see what that is gonna look like. Oh yeah, I have that one on there. Let's just revise that. There we go. So the idea there is basically having a separate thing with like injunctions to ignore, which should help out kind of most cases. And with this being kind of, a parent type thing, it does also mean that anyone in the country, or depending on how the settlement constitution is looking, which also kind of brings into just how important it is to make sure that the settlement you join, or the settlement that your town wants to join, has sensible constitutional rights for everyone involved in these cases. So when you create a town or when you create a country or federation, you just make sure that you're not getting yourself kind of into a dictatorship and they can do whatever they want with your stuff without you consenting to them. If I can grab a town foundation, see if I can oh yeah, I'm still a citizen of the this thing. Ooh, it's my homestead. Hang on. There we go. So when we're creating a new town, oh yeah, I need to apply to being supposed to be a member of. There we go. When you're creating one of these, you now have some new settings here, which is by default this is just your general run-of-the-mill standard election process. That has been kind of the default expectation of a general democracy, and it by the kind of blank applies to everything. But you do have the ability to, inside the articles for the Constitution, set specific civic action or abilities, which may not be super known about, and there's probably not a lot of customization to this degree in some of these cases, where you might want to set specific civic actions to be related or have different election processes for different civic actions. And especially in case of the injunctions, say you want to have, let's do this, so you want to have like your default for everyone and the citizens in this town, and then you can have a separate article that covers don't want to select anyone, so we want to leave none to that, but we want to set specifically for the injunctions and have, say, the mayor can make injunctions as an executor and do it immediately. Or you could have a completely separate election process of like a governing council, that these specific titles have access to this and can do it regardless. So kind of like a veto system over laws that are already existing. And I'm hoping I'm not kind of making it more complicated than it actually is, trying to explain it, because I have a risk of doing that as well. So yeah, if there's any general questions about this, pop them in there. If you feel that, oh my god, this is gonna ruin everything, or this is solving a solution to world peace, and so on and so forth, drop them in the settlements channel on the Discord, just for kind of discussions and or add feedback and so on. Yeah, so injunctions for towns are kind of useless because you don't really have a down tier settlement, because homesteads can't, you don't have a judicial area for homesteads, so you can't injunction a law for it. But hopefully it's going to be a good exertion of powers, and kind of tip that balance of properly being able to impose things to towns, yet still kind of leaving it to the general public to decide whether or not to use them, and kind of how and when and so on. But as with all the civic entities in this game, everything can be exploited and everything can be underused, but you can also get to really, really nice collaborative states and good balance in between natural implications and general progressions between towns and competitions and so on. So we're hoping that it's gonna open up some new ways to kind of deal with town to towns and general collaboration in these ways. although we could still use treaties rather than land invasion, especially if it's trade related. I mean, you can sort of do that with contracts, but it's something that we also want to kind of expand on a little bit and see what we can make out of it. It'd be great if we can set treaties to have towns be mandated to buy, sell certain tags of items. It'd be quite interesting. Hey Hitsu, if you are available on Discord, drop Dennis a message, because he has access to all of the keys and the related spreadsheets and all of that, as well as kind of the chat logs and whatnot. So pop him a message about it, and he can probably sort you out. So yeah, you know, hopefully it'll be a big, powerful enhancement of the general settlement system. So, oh yeah, so it's used to basically stop the biggest problem so far with shops not buying, selling fairly. Some form of mechanic to open a country store and make them trade more fairly is sorely needed. Yeah, it's a tough nut to crack, because it really needs kind of some creative solution in ways of handling the general kind of player mentality or player behavior. Time/time. Hitsu, yeah. Well, they're not replacing the law with, you know, like a better alternative. They are outright blocking it. So when you add that injunction, it is outright blocking it. I wonder if the trigger. So if we do grab like dig or mine, we add that here. See how it's blocking out any law that is trying to use dig or mine. I wonder if this actually works, or if it's gonna, yeah. So there is apparently a bug with selecting specific settlement, which is the problem. But here you can see that it is active, but it is being overridden by the injunction that's saying any law that is blocking or is using the triggers for block and mine, it just ignores. So that it's still happening. Civics debug, thank you. So if we do this and we got the debug on, you can see that the event is happening, and it is blocking any kind of legal implication. It's being blocked here. Jesse, yeah, that's a good idea. Having a law just state that it is not active, or it's being overridden inside here would probably be a nice addition. I'll write that down. Does it double the calculations for law, so the blocked law is still being calculated? It bypasses it. It basically acts as if the law isn't like fully triggered. So if you have something like a stat count for event, it should ignore the stat count, and so on. So federations can also injunction countries. Yes, any sub-settlement that can be injunctioned are having that available to it. So if you have a country law, so if we do this and we add a law for, let's do the same thing here. Let's do dig or mine. or actually, let's do plow field just to have a different trigger. And then we let's not revoke citizenship, let's prevent. And then we do a tilling field prevention. Then we just add that as a new law. Start the election for the law. And let's disable the debug. And then we do this, and now if we give do that, now we are being blocked by the till field prevention. And then we go through the Federation Large Court, and we add an injunction here. And then we go for, we can do something different here. So we pick the legal action instead, and just doing a bit of QA because we do this and do that, and we finish this. So here we go. Now the injunction is blocking stuff. That is, it's blocking anything that is doing preventions in both the country and the town. So yeah, Federations has the power to just nuke stuff in both sub settlements. So Federation can injunction both country and town. Country settlement can injunction towns, and towns just gets to do their merry way because they don't have anything below them kind of thing. So now I can till and do stuff again. Do I need to stop line? No. But yeah, so the general notion is just add more power to higher tier settlements instead of having child settlements having complete absolute dominance in their area regardless of which higher tier settlements they're a part of. So it adds sort of a layer of responsibility for the town to make sure that they actually get along with whoever they're joining, or if a town is adamantly refusing to cooperate with anyone, they're either not going to be let into a higher settlement at the moment because of the fact that they can't really do anything about it. But now they kind of need to do the opposite. The town need to be careful about what they join because their system of operations may differ from the views of the higher tiers. Could a town leave a country later on? Yeah, the all settlements still have the ability to secede from each other, depending on in the priority, and kind of cultural settlements and power wise and kind of what type of legal administrative systems they have and so on and so forth. Yes, there is a cooldown in between from the point where you get annexed to the point where you can secede. So you can't just immediately, ignore it and just like, nah, I'm out. Which is also configurable in the settlement configs, I believe. I recall seeing something for it. I think it's 72 hours, so 3 days. The error is allowing secession as a good dictatorship. Whole other subject. But yeah, so hopefully that answers most questions surrounding this, and I'll answer as we go along here. Next topic on the agenda, if we want to keep some sort of scheduling. The last stream kind of went overboard on a little bit. Can you prevent secessions using laws as a country? Yeah, you can prevent a little bit of everything. And that's also kind of where you know, federations can come into play as well. You can injunction laws that prevent secession for lower states. So if a federation wants towns to be able to leave countries, for example, they can injunction and prevent that prevention to be happening. And so on and so forth. So there's, you know, there's it's a big broad area of what ifs, what can, and how to, that we're hoping that a lot of players are going to be kind of tinkering with and seeing what happens. Next on the agenda was kind of going over some of the blacksmithing stuff, as someone was wondering about if the rumors are true and there's a new profession. Yes. On what do you think if the homestead had a small law system, kind of like towns, more like rules for the communal living? It's an interesting idea, and I believe we talked about it a little bit internally. But it you know, it's probably something we more like to look at expanding in terms of the auth system itself. So, you know, you could make like specific house rules basically, and so on. Which is on another subject. How come you guys keep adding things without optimizing the game first? Memory leaks has still been a major deal since day one. It is a fair question. And the general answer to it is it's kind of hard to do that as a, you know, as kind of a broad statement. So when we're adding things, we've got, you know, first off, we got completely different people working on different subjects of the game. A lot of coders are not very familiar with certain aspects of more in-depth optimization processes. And we have a few guys that are more specialized in analyzing performance-related issues, and so on and so forth. And, you know, they're only human; they can only work for so much. But at the same time, we also can't just completely halt general improvements and general changes and system implementations during this time, because, you know, then we'd basically be treading water and just standing still and nothing really happening, because we can still squeeze out that, you know, 10 extra FPS. But a few things that have changed notably in the project since at least 9.6 is, while we're still working really hard on making sure that we squeeze out as much as we can and keep optimizing it, we've had a significant boost in hardware that is capable of you know, getting more performance out of versus low-end machines. Actually use the hardware in a more efficient manner. So it's still not being, you know, it's still not optimized in the scale of everything just runs on every machine, but it is starting to allow more high-end hardware to actually utilize that high-end capacity. And optimizing a lot of the aspects in Eco in terms of optimization is really kind of death by 1,000 cuts. It's very, you know, it's very small pieces all over the place that needs to constantly get better and improved. As for general new stuff, it's actually part of the art team's agenda that all the new work tables that are being added, that we'll take a look at here, is also making use of completely new methodology to better streamline, use textures and share assets more and share materials more. So it is like all the new stuff that is being added is pushing technology to be more optimized. So it's kind of it's kind of we add more stuff, but by adding more stuff, we realize that these specific things are problems, and we improve upon them, which then globally is improving the entire project. And you know, as I said, it's kind of a constant thing. As we add more things, we see more red flags in code and performance where we can make major gains. There's also a lot of assets that hasn't really been properly optimized from the start that our team is kind of mincing through and going over. As mentioned, with the work tables being one of them, trees and general texturing and whatnot is also a big part of it, which is a part of the process that Toby went over for like the wetlands and all of the changes that we've done visually. It's making it look better and run more optimized in the same process. So you know, it's a fairly sophisticated topic, but it is on a high priority list. It's just, you know, we just don't have the capacity in the team to have everyone working on it. And we can't just not have the rest of the team, you know, sit idle and not do any work because of, you know, we need to have the game better running. Which is, you know, curse of smaller indie companies. Yeah, kind of got a little bit sidetracked there, but blacksmithing, and changes to smelting. So we talked about it a bit on the last stream, or you know, a little bit in depth, and whatnot, how what, and who what. So we've got a few new objects, which we have in here. So smelting and blacksmithing. Blacksmithing being basically a split branch inside the smith skill line that we showed up last time. Note that there's still a whole heap load of icons that are being created, so you know, stuff just has question marks on a lot of things. But we've got blacksmithing now as its own specialty, which is mainly handling tools and the craftables, and you know, kind of like the end solid components that used to belong to smelting. And it's not necessarily just to kind of dumb down smelting, because you know, if you're mainlining smelting, you're gonna feel very targeted by this update, unfortunately. But it's something that we really felt that smelting was just, you know, completely out of hand. So blacksmithing, as it's kind of split out now, is crafting. All the tools are done by blacksmithing, as well as some of the components, the entity craftables. Now these have been shuffled around through different workbenches as well. There's also a few dependencies in between them that needs forces anyone that does smelting and blacksmithing to actually require housing. They need to make sure that they have rooms that are available. They need to have the different machinery in the same kind of workspace, similar to industry and mechanics. And that's probably something that will keep expanding on the other professions as well. Carpentry is another kind of problematic one, in not so much as it needs to split, because I don't think so, but more in line of everything's kind of dumped onto workbenches and logging involved with that as well. So that's something that I want to kind of look at in the future. But yeah, so you know, how is this going to affect people in the direct thing? So we've got the new blacksmith table that houses some of the craftables, and this is using all the new fancy features that I just ranted on about with in terms of the optimization. So these tabletops are using the same kind of material assets as some of the other new tables, that makes it just not create a whole bunch of different materials, but they're actually sharing it, which means it's better memory handled. It is also completely rigged up for the painting stuff as well. So that's a few things that will probably, the painting thing is probably going to get its own kind of separate stream in the future. But basically, the different colored parts of this can be colorized in different channels. So you got like the back end handle here with the metal stuff, and then you got the drawers as another one, and then you got the handles, the third one. So there, there's a few technical things that are happening to the world objects to kind of smoothen out this process and make sure that they're streamlined. I know Toby was also looking at kind of making like an example thing to push out with the mod kit as well, to make it kind of easy to get in from the modder's perspective once the colorization stuff is in. Just so it's easy to kind of shove on and apply which part is being colorized and so on and so forth. So yeah, blacksmithing table is one of the new objects where you're doing most of the kind of end process crafting in some of these things. Mainly like utility stuff. The tools are going on the grindstone and the power hammer, which we'll see here in a bit. Which also makes the recipe lists a bit more non-chaotic. Grindstone is a new repair table. You can still repair everything on the old tool bench. That's still a thing. We are looking at seeing if we want to do different types of tiers of repair stations, so you need a better machinery piece to actually repair that specific tool in it. So we'll see what happens there. Also a new recipe addition is the leather hide to tools. So we've got the iron tiered ones here. And then we've got some changes and shufflings around with some of the things related to smelting that is gonna haunt people a bit, I think. One of the things is the bloomery now requires a room, which is a big one. And the same thing for the blast furnace as well. And there's a few innate reasons for this. One of them is there are a few entities here that requires additional workbenches, as I was talking about needing different benches and so on. So here you can see that we've got some new stuff coming in. We've got the town bell as a casting thing. This thing is still being in progress, so I'm hoping that it'll be ready. You also got the new cast furnace. Or cast furniture. We've got the bench, chair, and table. And as you can see, they require an anvil in the room to be able to be made. And then you have smelting. The smelting recipes are requiring those clay molds that we were talking about. They're returning half of them. And they, these recipes scale on with the modules as well. Who needs ventilation anyway? Am I right? It's very true. Although the blast furnace has an exhaust, so you are gonna need to put a pipe on it to pipe out the exhaustion. Is it possible to add an option to hide recipes that you don't have requirements and so on? There is a rework for the crafting UI, and I don't know if I want to kind of show those off just yet, but there is one being worked on. It's legitimately being mocked up and kind of poked around and happening, and we're looking at adding things like specific filters, search bar, and kind of being able to hide show based on profession availability and so on and so forth. So yeah, we got those in here, and then we got that delicious little other bug here. So on the anvil at the moment, because we do have another work table that isn't done yet, and it won't make it in 10.2, which is a metal extruder that I wanted to move the pipes over to. So the pipes are still staying on the anvil for the moment, but yes, they are smelting, and they'll stay at smelting. Which are the only kind of smelting recipes on the anvil, and that's why they're still in there. The functionality of the bell is just looking pretty, and we're looking at making it be able to ring. So yeah, you got some frames in here for the blacksmithing stuff. You got the saw blade. You got the nails in here, and so on. Oh yeah, the economy viewer is a whole other can of worms. And then we got the cast iron furniture that were coming in with the smelting. As smelting now is going to have a lot less to do in terms of general usability, we felt that it needed some more tangible things to throw in. So we've got the cast iron furniture, and they're stat-wise at the moment mirroring the lumber furniture. So it's not going to be, you know, it's kind of a tier 2 furniture kind of thing. Giving you a little bit of metalworks in your house if you feel like it. And as someone has, you know, a few people have already noticed that Jan is working on some outdoor stuff for a later update. So there's going to be specific furnitures that can be used outdoor that will give you points for you know, having kind of a garden slash patio thing. Which also comes in with its whole slew of other furnitures and crafting stations and so on. So there's quite a few things. Furniture coloring is gonna be handled by the colorization stuff. You're gonna be able to color basically everything and anything. Probably not gonna be able to do that from the gate, but once it's added, we'll we'll just continuously add the functionality for all things in the game, and so on. So there, you know, a few things there. And then we got the pottery table, which has been in the project for probably as long as the cast iron furniture. Any plans to add a coloring system to the lights? It's an interesting thing. Armored, hey, the cannery thing is still kind of being on the side because we have some ideas we want to do with it. We just haven't had time to fix those ideas. So it's, you know, it's still in there, but I want to have, I'm missing some parts I want to have for it to be able to ship it out. Will blocks only be able to have one color applied to it, or can you use an RGBA mask to apply different colors to different parts of the object? Blocks will be one color thing. At least at the moment. It might be able to support it more, but that's the trick with general blocks. If they need to hold more data, then it's gonna be, you know, you are gonna hit that optimization issue where, or the performance issue where they need to hold more variables and hold more general data, which means a large volume of blocks that are in the world are gonna need this extra amount, which are gonna slow down chunk loading, as well as, you know, general visual stuff. So there is, it's kind of a weighing value of really investigating how much we can push the colorization stuff without nuking performance. So that's also pretty high up on that list. World Objects is going to have 3 channels. So you've got primary, secondary, and auxiliary, essentially. So the pottery table we have here, which is where you're making your molds, and these are being consumed inside the blast furnace and bloomery for the iron, copper, and gold. And you've got the higher tier 1 for steel. And basic primitive 1 is gathering being the one that's primarily doing the low-end iron stuff. And then the pottery stuff is going to be the steel things. So you kind of go from gathering being, I mean, you're kind of needing iron all over the place anyway. So these are kind of the big chunk ones. A second part is the pottery table is now a thing that is... Let's keep a kiln as well. Otherwise I'm just going to confuse myself over what's where. So the kiln is also having a few things surrounding the pottery table, I believe. I think I added it in there. Need to check. No, I didn't. It's supposed to have a few pieces that are aligned on the pottery table, so still need to merge that. But essentially, the creation of the wet bricks are moved out of the kiln. Same thing with the pots, just to kind of clean up the just the general crafting list. I kind of liked the pots being in the kiln. It made sense with, you know, you're kind of firing things to completion and whatnot. However, it also made the crafting lists excessively long and really kind of annoying to deal with. So I shuffled over a few recipes over to this table as well to kind of clean it out a little bit. So that, you know, this is where your wet bricks are being generated, and this is where you're creating those molds, and as well as got that advanced upgrade for it. Armored, yeah. See, it's a controversial thing because just gonna bring Twitter and bring the YouTube thing in it. So I do not like how you get wood molds back. It's been an up and down thing. Like we've had so many general points and people commenting that why are all the molds breaking every time you craft something? You should be getting some back. And then on the other corner we get people that, you know, returning molds are stupid. It's hard to calculate for, and so on and so forth. So it's a bit of a bouncing back and forth. I'm leaning more towards that. It makes sense to return some and not, you know, completely shatter every single one, because you are having a decay. Economy stagnation. That's another subject entirely. Because you're still consuming the molds. You're just consuming less of them in the same time frame. So in that regard, you could increase the cost of the molds to account for that lack. Like, you know, if you have a problem with the molds returning half of them, you can make them twice as expensive. Because the issue there in from an economy stagnation point is that you're consuming less boards by returning some of the molds. So you could just have them cost more boards to offset that economical drain. Now on the whole economy stagnation thing, there you have a whole other thing that might have been snuck in there. We are working and looking into some actual like component maintenance stuff. Maybe I can I'll leave that to a separate stream altogether, I think. But we you know, stuff is happening. There is solid plans to make sure that stuff is being consumed and stuff is happening, and you need multiple things for different, you know, world objects and vehicles and whatnot and so on and so forth. There's stuff coming. My curiosity is piqued. I need to know. So yeah, there, you know, a lot of things are rummaging around. Binary clock, yeah. The I think just the general idea of maintenance kind of fits with eco, and it also helps the economy kind of revolve around constant use and things being consumed, and everyone's constantly being needed throughout. Is an important part of it. So you know, it's been something that's been on the table for a long time. It's just one of those things where so many features that we wrapped up to that regard. It's actually something I can answer to, Armored. Tool repair degradation is definitely looked at. So when you repair a tool, it'll degrade the total durability of it. So, you know, if that's going to be a static value or if that's going to be a percentage thing, still looking at that, but definitely definitely something. Yeah. Vehicles getting something similar as well. The entity themselves, probably not. The parts for them, definitely. Can we ask any question or just stick to 10.2 topics? Just fire away. If there's something in particular that I can't answer at the moment, or so on and so forth. You know, I'll just state that and kind of move around it. The cats are fine. They're cat napping now. Speaking of chunk loading, amazed to be honest how performant Unshrouded is, given that it's fully voxel game as well, and the voxel size is so much smaller and the view distance is measured in kilometers. It is interesting. I haven't had a look at Unshrouded yet. It's been on the board to kind of dive in and see what's going on and so on. See what they've been up to. And we have the last object that is inside sort of your early access tier things. I think we really need more garbage production. It's a whole system that Eco wants to deal with, but it's so underrepresented. That's also coming sometime, somewhere around. It's not being worked on at the moment, but there are solid plans of things that we want to do in somewhat of a realistic time frame. So the fletching table is a new object as well that is cooked up by the logging, and it is moving over the recurve bow and the composite bow, as well as an alternative recipe for arrows, into hunting. And I also remember some other stuff that I need to just making sure that I make a note out of it. So yeah, so we got a new hunting table, or fletching table for the hunters, and we are looking at in the future to also have different types of arrows, as well as like a resilience for animals. So you need to kind of scale up arrow usage to be able to kill tougher animals and so on. So there's a few ideas that's revolving around that, but that's probably going to be more towards the animal husbandry stuff, which is going to be further down the line. Question from my friend about laws. What about if we just wanted a specific article to be prevented? Because with so little different laws, we also include a lot of articles, yet not all might be detrimental. It's currently not supported, but it could be something that we can take a look at. But it's also going to get, it kind of gets really complicated in terms of how laws and articles being stacked on each other. But it's not a bad idea to look at. Someone on my server was a garbage man who moved things to a world dump. It may be cool to have waste removal be its own profession, maybe burning, recycling wasted materials. Along with garbage, you would need a recycling process to go with it. It is like the whole garbage and recycling as a general thing. Armored stone recycling just causes economic stagnation. It sort of does, but on the other hand, the world as it is today generally is really bad across the world with recycling, like actual true recycling, because it's too expensive to do the recycling. It's cheaper to just pour it out on a land dump. So it's a whole spectrum of ecological impact and implications, where there's a lot of aspects to it that can really fit well inside the eco world space. And it's definitely something that we are looking into in that. Either, Yeah, like Alpenglow comments here with Dad Speed's garbage mods adds tags to every item and the Yaw Crusher turns them into trash. Which is a nifty way to do it. The world also doesn't only have 20 to 50 people. No, but it, you know, each country in the world is handling garbage very, very, very differently depending on where in the world you are. And it's, you know, the whole thing, especially in Sweden now with the metalworking industry, super pushing for like being able to recycle steel and iron products to generate new steel, using a lot less pollutant ways of doing it, or, you know, dealing with the whole green energy thing and whatnot. But yeah, so we've got the fletching table. It's handled off. It's got some new hunting stuff, so hopefully hunters should be also getting some love and some more love in the future as well in those regards. We have a few things in here regarding blacksmithing and smelting that, well, it needs a tier 2 room, which is the blast furnace, and some of the recipe changes to that. So the power hammer still hasn't really gotten in game yet, so it's still a dev box. Sorry for that. But we have some recipe changes to, if we're looking at the blast furnace, for example. As you can see here, the list is a little bit longer. Or it's not really longer. It's hang on. Let me do this. Bam. There we go. So you still have the regular steel, copper, and iron, and so on. You got the quick climbing from the masonry, but the rebar, rivet, and steel pipes require a power hammer to be manufactured, which means that the blast furnace needs to be indoors with other machinery to be able to utilize them completely, or, you know, to 100%. And the same thing for the blacksmithing table here. Not sure if it was shown inside here, but basically we need the anvil for a few pieces here to hammer it out. I've been contemplating whether or not I want to add it to more of the recipes, but at the same time I also kind of want to keep it slightly separated, like you know, dealing with wall candles and wall lamps without keeping it somewhat simple. So there's a few things in here that aren't requiring these recipe module additions. Power hammer is dealing with the modern stuff at the moment. I wanted to have a third kind of upscaled version of a tool bench, basically. But it you know, Art Team only has time for so much. So I opted to just drop them all into the hammer, which makes the list a little bit too big, but basically it's doing all the modern steels and fiberglass stuff. So here is where you're crafting your hammers. It has a power requirement, so it requires electrical power. And see if we can grab that up here. It is untextured at the moment, but this is what it is looking like. So it's an electrically powered, basically chonka power hammer. Name says it all, I think. It's looking pretty neat. It's gonna look even better when it's textured, which should be hopefully very soon. It's electrical. And it's introduced, you craft, at the moment you're crafting it on the assembly line. So it is like that end stage, you already have access to electrical power by that time. Or, you know, it's kind of coming out at the same time. Which means that at the moment the steel tools are kind of being left out, which is why I'm kind of leaning into displacing them in somewhere else. So that's still a bit undecided, how and where. I don't know. We'll see. 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 We' On the other hand, I do have some plans and some new stuff that is targeting oil drilling in a later update that will get some of these parts to kind of transition into later. So you get into electronics, or you get into electricity and kind of dealing with industry, but you're not immediately necessarily chunking out modern tools as an as a result of getting electrical power. And we might also introduce a bit of electrical power, maybe it's slightly earlier as well. So there's a few things in there that's cooking around and not entirely set in stone. Any research papers tied to blacksmithing, alternative ways to make metallurgy? At the moment, no. It's that's also part of the whole kind of getting it into a playtestable state for QA and so on, to kind of review and go over and see where we're at and what we want to do with it. Because right now metallurgy, grab the research table. Metallurgy as a research gets in, it's still revolving kind of raw metal and ores, and like anything that generally made by blacksmithing felt kind of redundant, because you're still using metal to it. So it's things I'm still looking at for kind of the polish / before it's actually 100% done and ready to be shipped out. Large queues still takes a lot of clicks. Yeah. Also, did we get a repair all button? No. You still have kind of the repair slot being its own thing. Yeah, the whole labor and the whole labor stuff is it's kind of subject to different issues. So you have a few professions that have very few things to kind of do, maintain and work with in very few work order types. So oil drilling, I know, is a bit of an issue in that regard, because it only has like one workstation and you're just making like infinite orders, and then you sit there and fill labor excessively, just because you only really have like 3 places to do orders in. And some of that is mitigated by the fact that we break up into different intermediate resources. Actually, Waylin, hey, sounds like oil drums might be something a blacksmith could be producing instead of the drillers themselves. It is actually, because I completely forgot about it, I shuffled that over. That is inside, do this and do spawn, rolling mill is what it's called. Oil drums are manufactured inside the rolling mill now. And they're under iron, made by advanced smelting for a few reasons. It's also generating more of them. And it's something that we're looking at in a future update as well, to kind of rehaul oil drilling, to do liquids, to pipe it, to not have, you use barrels for the end products, but you're not using them for the like crude to types of liquids, and then seeing what we can do with multiple types of liquids, and a lot of things in that regard. So there's a few things in there that were just shuffling around in general. Then we have ink and printing supplies being a change if anyone is experienced in having used let's see where I was with what. So the printing press, if you have used the import texture feature on a server, or if you copied different types of art items, grab this. So this thing here, where you can just kind of import something and you can dump it out. Grab up the chat there as well. This used to consume only flat out only consumed paper, and the paper is no longer what this machine is consuming. It's consuming grab small paper machine, which is a fantastic name on it. So it is consuming printing supplies, and printing supplies is made from ink and paper. It's consuming souls. So ink is made at the mill at the moment, and it contains charcoal, glass, and oil. So it's basically, you know, a glass container for the ink, and then that gets shipped over to the paper milling. Paper milling creates the printing supplies. Anyone can use the printing press, but it requires pieces for it. And then we also have a few experimental recipes for things like paint bucket to be consumable, or, you know, a part of the consumable process for painting stuff later on. And now Cat decided to wake up, so she's rummaging around. So that is that'll be helpful to deal with some of the balancing problems where, you know, if you wanted to make copying a piece of art, or, you know, a picture or whatnot, be more expensive, you couldn't really do that. You had no real way of kind of balancing that out without making paper significantly more expensive and require you to cut down a whole forest to you know, copy one thing. It gives you that intermediary part, and also involves milling and paper milling to do their part in allowing people to use it. So that's, you know, just some more stuff that's going into paper milling, that's continuously just adding some worth to some of the more obscure and sidetracked professions that we're having sort of a goal to just keep fleshing out more content in a just a completionist agenda to it. The rolling mill is a little bit high on its volume. Very explorative cat. And then we had, I think that's kind of wrapping up the blacksmithing introduction. Hope it answered some questions surrounding it, and what's going to happen, and where things are going to be happening. And as with any, you know, the bloomery at the moment isn't causing any pollution. Pollution is something that we are looking into. We're also looking into animal behavior towards the whole ecological impact and surrounding stuff. So there's a lot of big core feature change, or core feature fixes that are being looked at. Part of them being hinged on animals being more predictive and be more understandable in how they work, how they operate for the players. More pollution, make animals more aggressive. Definitely gonna be more pollution stuff. It'll be its own whole stream series, basically, topic. But there's a lot of things that are evolving to doing a lot of things that will fix it. We also have some fixes for this particular issue with animals. Casper figured out why this was happening. So hopefully we'll we'll be able to push out the fix with some more animal fixes. He's been doing absolutely stellar work in diagnosing and updating the path following and how the animals are behaving and pathing around. So, you know, general fixes, a whole list of them is coming out, both in 10.2 and future updates. Do we have a general ETA or goal date for the release of 10.2? We have an internal goal, but it depends a little bit on the stars aligning and everything being done in what's done in what capacity and so on. Why not just forbid animals to walk on roof blocks? It's a little bit more complicated than that, because they essentially get stuck and the pathing thinks that they're stuck, and then they get shifted up to the topmost available block. So it's not like it's not that they're spawning up here, it's that the pathing decided that they are stuck, so they need to be moved to the closest kind of open most area of available spacing. But yeah, so you know, we have two guys almost exclusively working on like a whole bunch of animal fixes. So we've got stuff is being improved and stuff is coming for it. Allow animals to jump off cliffs and we can do traps. Yeah, seen a few of those happen, and it's not graceful. I'm just gonna shift over here for a second while. Why is she is really adamant about something. Hope they won't spawn on long bridges as well as in the middle of the ocean. No, they're like the whole animal situation is really like properly dug into and investigated. There's a huge list of things that are happening. Some are in 10.2, some are in 10.3, some are coming in future updates, and so on and so forth. So, you know, just shuffling builds around here so I can hop in on release, which is where we got see if that is done. That is done. Start that server. Put them in wheels and produce green energy. Can we enslave animals by catching them in balls and spheres? What's going on about paper milling? It's kind of useless. It's like I said, it's part of the drive to keep improving and adding things to it. So paper milling is kind of an off profession at the moment because it's been so, like, paper hasn't really been involved in a lot of things, and I still got a few water things coming up. Meowinix, the elephants one. But yeah, paper milling as well as kind of fertilizer and some of the other off professions that are it's things that require substantial feature implementations in different aspects in regards to make them work better in the capacity they're supposed to be working in. Compared to things like smelting, where we can just, you know, add 2 more work tables and a few more intermediate recipes and call it a day, because it has a nice fit in the tech tree. You know, we can expand on it. It's easy to approach. It's easy to access. It's an integral, like, centerpiece of it. But things like paper milling, for example, paper milling comes in fairly early on, but the machinery to do stuff for it comes in around mid-game. And the issue then is, if we want to introduce paper as a consumable early on, then we also need to dump down paper milling skill itself, and then suddenly all the skills are in tier 1. So there's not really kind of a progressional skill up tech tree advancement, unlock new professions that make sense in mid-game. So it has to be, it needs to kind of fit the style and the general advancement. which also makes it a very difficult profession to kind of get in there and feel like it's belonging in a nice way. I'm just connecting to the server here and switch over the screen again. Is it playing nice? Are we playing nice? Can we connect properly? Maybe, maybe not. Let it create culture. That's part of the idea of the printing press. So, you know, you can take already existing stuff and kind of copy it and make duplications of it or and whatnot. Paper milling with just the bonuses to paper production, just like you know, like we have a few like unique paper milling things in mind, as well as part of it is adding things like the printing supplies that now requires printing paper milling to actually make. So you need to import textures into the game using the printing press, you need to have someone being a paper miller, and there's more of that coming. We have some further plans that deals with some of that. Can I connect? Can you let me know, server, please? Pretty please. Just making sure I'm on the right branch. I am on the right branch. Why is it not letting me do that? It is really not liking it. Can we connect with that one? Server says no. Yeah, that's basically what the server is saying at the moment. It's like, I refuse to let you in. You have done enough water damage to this world. Go away, shoo. This is just ridiculous. I am on a separate branch. It might be some discrepancy in between the client and the branch that's causing some issues. Just hoping that's not the case, because I forgot to grab a copy of it. They are making the funniest noises at the moment. What? They're getting a bit restless and they want me to rummage around and play with them. Can we? Yes, there we go. I think. There we go, now it's connecting. Hopefully I loaded the darn water world as well. Yeah. So I've had some fun experimenting with some of the changes to water, and are we? Thank you. Gabriel has been an absolute freaking rock star at dealing with some of the water issues. So this is on the current kind of dealing with what's available on the not release branch, if that makes sense. Now it's getting really interesting. No, so a few issues that we've had is water sourcing not really disappearing. And so if we grab this, flip that on, water isn't really visually kind of behaving the way we want it to. We had the problem of it generating source blocks. The source blocks are then multiplying, and it's causing absolute mayhem and destruction and whatnot. So we continued on with the general issues surrounding water. One of the big one being when water is being blocked off, and depending on the scenario, if it's falling from a pipe, it tended to create source blocks at the bottom. and it spreads around and so on and so forth. So we are looking at ways to be able to like flood world objects without actually causing them to be permanently flooded. So it doesn't generate source blocks at any given point now from pipes, which may cause some issues in terms of creative builds, where you might be using, you might be shuffling around pipes quite a lot to be able to create source blocks in some manner, way, shape, or form, to then be able to kind of move water around. It is now properly not behaving like a source of generation. So when you flip this off, it'll properly disintegrate the water that it's flowing. So you need to have it always on to kind of be there. And do encased blocks still convert to source blocks under some circumstances? No, at the moment they don't. Well, if I remember correctly from the discussion, then it shouldn't be. Which I'll come to that in a second here. So what was causing the problem in general was that it wasn't really capable of removing encased water blocks. So when you had water, so if you had water coming down a trickle, a stream or something, and then it reached a single solid, kind of like fell into a one block area, something like this, it was creating that encased water block. And that's, purely a runoff on the server optimization. And then you would cut the inlet to this water source. So if we grab this and block that off here, when the encased water block no longer has a surface above it, or a blocked by water above it, it should be turning into normal water blocks. Under certain conditions, it wasn't doing that. It was staying as that encased water block, which then acted as a water source. But it was a source that you were unable to completely delete. And that was causing absolute freaking mayhem. Now it's properly drying up in any of these situations. The downside is you can't artificially create water source blocks anymore. And that's something that we keep working on it. We'll keep improving on it, and it's something that we kind of want to be able to do. But it felt that it was more important to make sure that water is predictive and not causing an absolute headache dealing with from the player's perspective, than having the ability to do that in the current state of the code. Water source blocks, I feel, shouldn't be created. No, and it was also a big debate internally as well. It's like, looking at how water works here, it's a block voxel world. Why not just mirror Minecraft, for example? But Minecraft also has the approach of being extremely unrealistic in that sense, where you can just pick a bucket and you can move a water source block and you can place it anywhere in the world, which kind of removed a lot of the aspects of water we wanted to retain for eco. As we want water sourcing to be important. We want you to utilize the lakes that are in the world. We want you to use the rivers in the world. We don't want you to just artificially create, a new lake out of a 1x1 block, basically. So there's a, both design-wise but also functionality-wise, we kind of wanted to make sure that we still have that open mentality of being able to look at things to make sure that they're working, but still being able to have that interactive feel and be able to do that creativity things. So from is there a planned fix for the oceanside river digging to use water wheels? Not really. I don't mind them. one of the things I'd like to see, like the long-term scope vision, like the magical beyond the Tomorrowland of what water would work, was basically you have an actual volume of water, and then as it gets depleted and it would fill up stuff, it would drain that, and you could, you know, actually drain the ocean, if you will, as long as you have somewhere else to move it. You argue about realism but allow silly water wheels. It's more about a restriction in the game, in terms of what's being realistic for what the game can do. Because adding something like a full volumetric count for world water is massively performant heavy, unless you do it right, and even then it has some significant impact potential, which is why it's working in the manner it's working right now. But as I said, we prioritize on making water more predictive and user-friendly, rather than opt for we have to be able to do this at the moment and then have a more long-term solution for doing things like in this scenario where we want to be able to fill up this as a container in a pool. It's currently not doing that. It doesn't have the logic for it. We have some ideas on how to do it. And this is also part of the whole canal building someone was mentioning. Which is... This is also part of like some of the testing things I was doing. So an issue previously, and it's still technically an issue, with the mindset of we can't backfill and scale height of water when you're pouring in water into an already excavated area, essentially. But compared to previously, where water didn't properly downfill, when you have a water source filling in a top tile block, you can now properly do that. So here I have this excavated completely under. Imagine this being, you know, a fancy aqueduct going from one side of the river to the other side of the river, and we're connecting this. So we're doing that. And now I don't even need this. It's a bit of a... So this in itself is a little bit of an exploit, if you will, in terms of not needing aqueducts at the bottom. But that's also things that we're looking at how we want to deal with before we kind of stop it being usable. So when you create a river or, you know, a canal, you can excavate the entirety now, which you couldn't do before. You kind of had to do it either one by one gradually, or you needed to kind of backfill wall section at the time, which Choco Taco made an interesting video on, kind of compilation on how he did their massive freaking thing underground. But now if you let the water in and you have sort of the baseline of where you want the canal to be at, you can let this fill in here, and as it fills in, you can grab those blocks and it'll properly fill the vacant space underneath it. So it's not going to leave air gaps, air bubbles, and so on underground. It'll actually properly detect any and all spacage in below it. And fill up accordingly as you go along. Which is something the system just didn't cope with previously. It was doing all kinds of madness in the back end. Similar to it. But the difference here is that this at the moment is just artificially... Like, these are not source blocks at all in this canal. Like, the water is being sourced from the river. So if you block this off, it's gonna dry. It's gonna dry this out. And that's going back into this thing where it's not properly filling up the entire way, which is the way we want it to work. And that's, you know, things that we keep doing in improvements too. But it's making sure the first kind of major step that we had, especially looking at what people are doing with water now after 10.0 release, is making sure that water isn't destructive to people's buildings and destructive in the manner of being completely unpredictable and unusable in a lot of ways. Like you break a pipe and suddenly you get, you know, splashes all over the place. Someone asked for aqueducts for other type of block types last stream. You can, it hasn't been added, and it probably wouldn't be a bad idea to get something for that, but it would be something that Art would need to set up a new block form for. However, if you do want to mod in the aqueduct capacity for existing blocks, so if you want to add, you know, like the normal, like Ashlar's normal cube blocks and so on, all you need to do is just add a watertight attribute to it. Would it be possible to make so pipes doesn't spew out water if the ends are open instead and require a special outlet? Like I said, the water from pipes properly they properly empty out and dry up, so they're not going to create any source blocks out of them anymore. But yeah, so hopefully that'll fix a lot of the scenarios and issues people have been having with water as kind of being unruly and so on. And then we also have a few passes for the visual stuff where it's missing certain connections and faces. So that's also being looked at. There are a few exceptions that are still handling. Well, pipe still needs to kind of create the water blocks, because if you want pipes to kind of fill in channels, they need to create those blocks to visually see it. Because that's something we still want to do. And the second thing is, and I'm not sure that is merged yet, and I think I'm just gonna be a bit cheeky because it's not on the branch with these fixes. Just give me half a second here. So the second part of what Gabriel was fixing when he was going over the water thing that I was kind of specifically asking for was going over the Hitsu on maybe they shouldn't be creating the water blocks, or maybe they should create the water block on the bottommost tile. Yeah, that is like the visual aspect of water falling out of pipes is something that we're improving on. Might not make it in 10.2, but it's on the board of like, it should just create the water block by the bottom basin for it, or it should be more of a fluid water thing rather than like a splutter thing onto like until it hits that end block. So I got some YouTube questions as well with on the fertilizer mentioned earlier. Fertilizer will kind of go through a whole workload metamorphosis on. It'll do a bunch of other stuff as well. It might be renamed in the same process as well. But fertilizer in general is getting a huge shakeover whenever we get some time to actually delve into the farming stuff. So there's a bigger aspect of it where it needs to be visualized better. It's we got some ideas for how to, like when you're applying fertilizer, you're supposed to be seeing it better, you know, both by how it's adding to the chunk, similar to when you're claiming plots and so on. But also fertilizer having a bit different usability in the crops, and different crops absorbing different volumes, and some crops returning based on processing and farming. So there's a whole subset of stuff happening there. I mean, that's not entirely unthinkable. But that's, you know, separate update, separate topic, separate stream. Making other blocks behave like aqueducts is Alpen. If you're looking from the modding perspective of it, the only thing that you need to do to make it behave like aqueducts is just adding the watertight attribute on it. That's the only thing that's kind of flagging a block form to be treated like a water carry block. Creative, when it comes to admin / creative part of it, let's see if I can find it. Sworn it was still sworn it was still open, but both were merged, so I could have used that one. That's a bit sad. There we go. Let's copy that. Grab that over there. Do that. So we have the flood tool, which, if you've been poking around at some of the more intricate things, very water unintuitive things, so this thing here is getting some fixes and so on and so forth. Previously it was being a bit unintuitive in terms of what it did and how it did it, but basically this creates water. So it's not doing encased water, it's not doing any of the other thingies, but it's actually creating water blocks where it's placing it. And this gets a little bit of a tune-up with Gabriel's fixes and changes to it, where it's actually removing / adding top layer water and connected water sources. So this thing is what you're creatively using as an admin to kind of create pools and so on. So a few improvements to that one. Just being able to kind of fill up, add in, and it deals with the layer of water, not the entirety of the body. And then you also have a shift modifier for it to actually remove the entirety of the body. So you can do things like, from an admin perspective, like deal with like a server-wide flood, or water level rises, everyone's very unhappy and you want to rescind that. You can do that with the flood tool now. So a bit of love in that regard as well. It also helped that deal with debugging and so on with water. Accidentally delete the whole ocean. Yeah, but you even if you did that, you just need a button press to put the ocean back in place. But yeah, very, very sad fishes for a bit, I guess. But yeah, no, hope that everyone is gonna be a bit more sane working with the water stuff, and surrounding things. And as I've said, this is not the final form of water. We're keep working on it. We are keeping onwards with the improvements for it and making sure that it works in the way we want it to work, and also works in the way players expect it to work, which is by far the more important part. But at least with a lot of these fixes that are coming out, hopefully as soon as possible, it'll be a lot less madness with it. I bet it'll take hours for the whole ocean water chunks to be deleted. Nah, it's pretty quick. Surprisingly so, to be fair. But yeah, I think we'll probably wrap it up there for for this stream. Hoping everyone has gotten some questions answered and gotten some food for thought about what to do in their next run and everything surrounding. Oh yeah, on I completely forgot to answer that. I'm sorry. On the survey recently, mentioning the ideas of trains for 1.0 and so on. Time frame for 1.0 is just, you know, not really something I can answer now, since we're kind of hesitant on answering for a time frame for 10.2. Will 10.2 require a wipe? It shouldn't. It may require you to shuffle around priorities a little bit and workstations because of new room requirements and so on. Well, what is that thing called? It's called steel wall lamp, right? Steel wall. Help me out, guys. Lamp, light, icon. I can never remember these. Where's the damn thing? Electric wall lamp. Thank you. That's why I have the tech tree open on my right side, so I know what things are called in normal circumstances. Shiny lighty thingy. Weighing too much. Do that. I even had a freaking turbine here already. Another thing, just as kind of a resulting thing. This was something that got everyone very sad. After the changes with the volume requirements and so on. These will be fixed in 10.2 as well. So any lighting that makes sense to be used outdoors will be able to be used outdoors, still yield points indoors as well, and so on. So outdoor lighting is going to be back on menu. In that update as well. But on trains, it's been iterated before, but the survey is kind of wholeheartedly peaking towards a lot of the aspects that we were anticipating it to be peaking to. Yes, trains is a fairly high requested feature, but it also doesn't really make sense compared to some of the other big topics that we want to be done with before 1.0, that are also revolving some of the Kickstarter stuff, especially in terms of like animal management. Think Armored, if you do get a helicopter, it's probably not going to be a flyable one. Because no one said it was needing to fly, right? Just add in a little painting of a helicopter. And as I said, if will 10.2 require wipe? It shouldn't. Stuff should be migratable. It is a minor update. It's not any world gen changes. Whole slew of fixes. The new blacksmithing and stuff may cause a little bit of an issue in terms of just smoothly progressing over and with the recipe changes, because there's quite a lot of them. But you know, as usual, if you do run into any problems with migrations once that happens, make sure to grab a backup prior to updating. If it does fail migrations, it should also reject the actual update save. So there's something in there. Maybe if or when the RCC code is replaced. Yeah. Nerf guns are my next requested feature. Don't care about trains. Yeah, there's a lot of things to do with the animals, and the whole animal husbandry and general animal interactability is something that is vastly underappreciated and underused at the moment, and that's probably going to be a big topic for a major update. But we'll go in on that in later streams and so on. I'm probably gonna see some blog posts in regards to that as well eventually. But yeah, I think we got a lot of stuff out of the way, a lot of topics being discussed, and I'm quite happy. Hope you guys are happy. It's been fun, and take my leave here. I will always available around on Discord, and either in Dev Hangout or one of the sub topic channels. If I'm playing on White Tiger this cycle, no, I'm kind of drowning in stuff to do. Ooh, that I'm on the wrong branch for that, but yeah. Some other miscellaneous recipes that's going in is like fish oil, fish stock, turning pelts into leather hides, and so on. So there's a few kind of quality of life and overarching recipes as well that's coming in 10.2. It's a pretty substantial kind of general addition to the game. But yeah, hopefully everyone is looking forward to it, and been great as I said, and I'll catch you on another stream. So thank you everyone for participating and going crazy in chat, as it's been outright pleasure, and just answering the questions that gets pushed out. And like I said, if you have any more and follow-up stuff, just drop them in on Discord, and try to answer as much as possible and or start discussions with people. So yeah, have a great weekend, take care everyone, and talk to you on the next one.